We are very pleased to welcome you to the Congress of Bread Ambassadors in Saab Hotel this morning. The topic for this Congress is baking and snacking. There will be 3 stages with Sébastien Mignot. It is also broadcast online on the Trade Fair channel and on the Ambassadors channel. First of all, the definition of baking and snacking by Sylvain, and then the presentation by our 2 friends from different countries, Christoph Ackermann for Switzerland, Davida for India, Bogdan for Ukraine, Johannes Holz for Brazil, and Fausta for Italy. Then, after these presentations of their snacking situation in their own countries, we'll move on to a panel discussion with Fabrice Pauchanson, who is at the Cuisine Academy, Caroline Masson, consultant in food science, and Sébastien Riparis, expert in gastronomic issues. And we can have a discussion with them. So, Sébastien, you are the moderator of this panel discussion. You have the floor. Thank you, Dominique. Good morning, everyone. We're going to try and have you traveling around the world, 5 minutes per country, so that you discover the feel, the impressions of each speaker on the snacking world. Sometimes it can be a personal sensitivity, but there are also facts and figures that will be presented to you, and we'll give you these figures. But the most difficult thing is to give a definition of baking and snacking. This is why Sylvain is going to come and bring his definition. What is the definition we should come up with? How about baking, catering, snacking, all these words? The point is to offer a range of sandwiches and snacks that include fillings and bread. Both are important. That bread has to be interesting in terms of nutrition. Given the numbers of years we've been talking about respective Spanish, we all understand that we have a virtuous method that has to be interesting in terms of nutrition. The notion of native flour is important. Organic, sensible agriculture, grains. For the past few years, in our activities, we need to offer beautiful and tasty food to satisfy the expectations of our customer. It's easy to find information on the internet to know what's healthy and what's not, has nutritional value. And so bakers have to take this into account. Customers have access to fast information to keep up to date with communication on nutrition. So bakers have a role to play in out-of-home food. I think 34% of people eat out of home regularly. But bakers have to remain in their field, that is to say, sandwiches with bread, because bakers are here to propose bread to their customers. And out-of-home baking has to follow the trends while proposing excellent traditional sandwiches such as the ham and butter sandwich, but vegetarian or vegan sandwiches too, keeping an eye on different segments. It's a new era. Sandwiches are now an everyday consumption product. It's not only a French trend. We can see that happening all around the world. And so we have panelists here today to actually show us here today what out-of-home baking and snacking is. Thank you, Sylvain. It is a wide debate. So I will start giving an overview on what we have perceived at the French level. I will try to show you what we observed. Let's start from the years 2000. We don't have many figures that are still up to date. But in the years 2000, it was the beginning of snacking per se. It was a limited offer. It was mainly for specialized baking, like fast food restaurants. There were franchises. Let's not give names, but there were franchises specialized in that kind of snack food. This was the place to go to find a sandwich. It made sense to go to these brands. And the menu was pretty limited. And hot sandwiches were making their coming out, if you will. It was a revolution for some Americans with chips and fries. I know we have a nutritionist here with us. Maybe she'll not like what I'm saying, but bread, steak, fries, that was the calorie bomber's typical snack, as the German would say. And so craftsman baking was becoming more and more aware, especially in urban areas, about this trend. But in rural areas, we were behind. We were stuck in this idea that sandwiches were just for workers, the meal for people who were out of home for work, on a work site, for instance. 10 years later, ranges had expanded. Burgers had made their entrance. Paninis also. We had tried to make things more and more practical for the bakeries to adapt to these offers. So from an average of 3 sandwich-like products, we went up to 8, a range of 8. So a wider range. And we tried to make it as consumers, in France at least, were becoming more and more aware that a baker's, was a place to go to have lunch, for instance. So as bakers, it was a big change for us. And that's when bakers started proposing coffee in the morning at a sitting table. We tried to make them sit down so that they would have a space. Let's make our bakery your home, somewhere you feel good and you enjoy eating. And we tried to take things further. We started becoming like restaurants. And with Dominique, when we prepared the briefing, he told us, be careful, it's not fast food restaurant. But today, fast food restaurant, snacking, what is the border between these concepts? I think it doesn't exist anymore. We wanted people to sit down. We wanted to serve them. Sometimes we bring sandwiches to the table ourselves. We wait tables. So we're like restaurants. We brought in catering specialists, cooks. We hired new people. And so this kind of upgrade benefited the whole sector, which actually boomed over 65% over 10 years. This is the turnover of fast food from 7.5 billion euros to 19 billion in 1917. So it's huge. It's unbelievable. Some people didn't believe in snacking as a sector. They just thought it was a trend that would come and go. But consumers changed their habits. And in France, we were not used to go out for a sandwich. We were not used to having a very short lunch break. We wanted to go to the restaurant or go home and have our home-cooked meal for lunch. So all these was changed. So, as bakers, we followed the new trend. And over 20 years, we ended up over-investing in our bakeries. Why? Because to add this new trade in our bakeries, we needed places for people to park, we needed clean spaces to eat, places to sit down. And so in terms of profitability, it created a lot of changes. And so our craftsmen, our craftspeople, actually struggled sometimes to take in all these investments. So in 2010, it was a bit difficult. And my feeling is that 12 years later, it is even more difficult to find the right staff to serve these snacks, to have bakers that have free time to make different breads, to make smaller bread loaves and rolls. So it's a very difficult world for employees and employers. We have new baking franchises that are appearing. These larger structures actually were hit. I went back to some franchises bakeries to see what snacking meant to them today. And I was struck. Many of them bet on pizzas, for instance, as warm meals. Paninis remains a classical thing. Burgers have become a big thing. But I think that the offer, the range, was not that huge after all. And I think some craftsman bakeries had taken things way further. Today, we think that 45% of the turnover for some companies comes from the snacking. Some bakeries, of course, it depends if you're in an urban area, rural area, it varies widely. In terms of products, we had a change of mentalities, a change of habits. For some people, snacking was only about, finger food. It's not about nutrition. It's not about nibbling. It's about nibbling more than nutrition. It was, a once in a while. Nutrition was not key. And then snacking has become the out-of-home meal. You talked about meals. Yes, today snacking has become a meal time. It's about going to the restaurant in a short time with nutrition expectations. And I agree with what you said. Expectations have risen a lot. Sandwiches today has become a combo. It's sold with food, with drink, dessert. Pizza has remained an easy habit because it was already done in bakeries before, and it has become a renewed fashion, if you will. Burgers, an ongoing trend, a boom, really. In restaurants and in snacking and fast food and snacking bakeries, keeps evolving and developing. The trend has not fallen. The size of products has changed. It used to be half a baguette for each sandwich. Now things have been rethought and modified. And a price range that has developed as well. Let's not forget that snacking is not only about savory things. Snacking is also sweet things. Something like a dessert or something at tea time because you haven't had time to have dessert at lunch. So snacking, let's not forget that it's also about sweet things. So there was a huge trend, and Mr. COVID arrived, and it changed everything. There were lockdowns, health restrictions, commercial habits were completely changed in terms of the time we spent getting the payment. There was filters, fences, barriers, windows. So our trends were broken down. For the first time, all fast food and snacking sectors were hit. Drops, depending on what figures you're looking at. You can see all kinds of figures, from -20 to -50% to even more. And let's not talk about full-time restaurants because they were completely closed down. So after the lockdown, bakers and snack providers were starting to revive their offer, but a lot of things had changed. The way working days were organized. Working from home had become the biggest trend. For people's mind, when going to buy a sandwich, when you have to go queuing, it doesn't feel the same. People don't want to stay in a queue. People don't want to be close to people. People are not expecting the same kind of service and waiting. So this is what we're going to have to look at for the future. There are interesting figures before the COVID and after the COVID. 48%, nearly 1% out of two, take at least an out-of-home meal once a week. Out-of-home meal under 10 euros amount to 75% of the out-of-home meals. Drives have improved. Or takeaway drives have increased 75%. So maybe that's something to think about. Maybe we have to rethink our waiting and service. 2.6 billion burgers are eaten at home and in restaurants a year. I thought this figure was amazing. As French people, burgers for us, at first we thought never, it will never happen. And now you can see in any restaurant, even gastronomic restaurant, they're offering a burger. And now burgers are not only fast food, they are real cuisine. And consumers like it. They want it. 88% of adults have a snack break at some point, whether it's during your sports activities, at work, at one point or another, you're comfortable with snacking. People working from home prefer having just a short snack rather than traditional meal. 58% of people have broken down their food intake in smaller intakes. For instance, I eat a sandwich now and I will have my dessert in a couple of hours. Well, yes, as you can see, I have had my dessert. You can see it on me, but later. So these figures were aimed at making you think. Oh, of course, it's also tainted by my vision, but according to me, what is important for you and the consumers? What are the expectations? Strong expectation on hygiene, pragmatism, packaging, and environmental issues. All of us questioned the origin of their ingredients, but also the packaging, local supplies, local produce, nutrition, key element, something very important for consumers still. Clean label. Bread in all shape and forms. Because I think baguette is not the only way to go for sandwiches and snacks. I think a lot of people have worked on that issue. You can read it in the book. Local offers. I think we have to rethink our food chain with more local supplies. Service maybe was the key element at the top of the list. Revolutioning snacking with seating tables, waiting. Should we not rethink all that? And beware, as I said, there is a trend of prices going up for snacking. Be careful, there is a price disconnect. We know that there will be a lot of inflation this year. Prices will increase crazily everywhere. So we have to be aware of what we're going to set as prices. Because 75% used to be bought under 10 euros for a French snack meal. What is it going to be like in the future? The future is encouraging. There are many things to think, many avenues to explore. I think the future is ours to take. But let's keep in mind that we have baking values that we want to pass on in our snacking products to differentiate from supermarkets and franchises. I think we have a lot to bring in. The proof is in the book. Maybe we can't do everything in the book, but a lot of it is feasible. So let's move on with this overview. Thank you for this first part about France. And I will now give the floor to Switzerland. And Christophe, I think you're going to show us your vision of snacking and evolution, and then we'll swap. Good morning, everyone. For those I haven't had time to see before this morning, let me start with the zapper. Indeed. We tried to come up with a synthesis of what has happened for the past 20 years in snacking in our country. Many things have already been said. There are topics that are more or less global, I think. So I agree with things that were said in the presentation. And it makes sense and it's reassuring because we all come up with the same conclusions regarding the current trends. So what we've observed is that at the beginning of the years 2000, the snack offer was still limited. And I added the notion of creativity. We had very traditional offers, basic sandwiches, ham and butter, all the baguettes and brioche-like bread, but it was not. At the end of the 90s, early 2000s, we didn't think about trying to find new things in snacking. It was considered as a niche market. It didn't feel interesting for many craftsmen. Of course, maybe it's just a general vision. There were always exceptions, like anywhere, anytime. There were always people ahead of their times, thinking differently. To give you an example, those years, our traditional was the ramequin au fromage, a quiche-like snack, which is very basic with our local cheese gruyère. The Taiyo Grove, a simple snack in Switzerland, which are really baking snacks, or bakery snacks, sorry, that were not really sandwiches. Because the basic sandwiches offered in bakeries was very limited. That was the observation for the years 2000. Now, the customers' demand. There was a notion that we didn't take into account was special diets, like we didn't hear about vegan or flexitarians or vegetarian, all these specific diets that are quite common today. We only heard about vegetarian people, but it was still considered as exotic for us. Even all the more in bakeries, it was not taken into account. Very few bakers were suggesting something else than a tomato and mozzarella sandwich for those who were the most, adventurous. Bakers had no offer, and the consumer would not ask for it either. There was no connection. People didn't think, my baker can come up with something else. So the presentation, my presentation is illustrated with specific ingredients and how we use it. In Switzerland, in my region, the district of Vaud, which is a French-speaking area on the western part of Switzerland, we have what we call gros bon vaudois, made from melted and slowly roasted pork fat. It has become more and more rare. A lot of, because of hygiene reasons with cheese, it's more and more difficult to outsource to find the product. But it's something that is really part of our snacking offer. To us, it's very important to support this sector, these producers of Gros Bon Vaudois, despite the difficulties, because it's really close to my heart. It's called Gros Bon, and I think it looks, maybe in France it's called the graton. It's a similar product. But it's very specific to my region, a few kilometers around my home. So this is our another key product, the Taiyo Grove. It has spread beyond the borders of my district, but it's still a very local product. There are two main types of this product, either with a raised dough or with a raised puff dough. We have two schools, if you will, two traditions. There are families, dogmas. Sometimes it can even lead to delicate situations between these two families. The picture you have is my version with the raised puff dough. So this is something close to my heart again, and I will be really happy to discuss that with you later. And a last analogy with what you know as the gratin in France. So that was the first product I wanted to present to you to illustrate my presentation. Now, the year's 2010s. There was a big trend in the consumer's demand, a big change. I think changes are accelerating exponentially. It started shifting in the early 2000s, then 2010s, and now it's even going faster. The changes are going faster and faster. So in the years 2010s, the demand for snack food was really evolving. And as was said previously, there was a demand for more and more elaborate and sophisticated products. Consumers wanted something else. They wanted to get away from the traditional ham and butter sandwich. So bakers came up with broader ranges, not only sandwiches, but different breads, different fillings for the consumers. It was really important to meet the demand because the trend is ongoing and it's increasing and going faster and faster. It was emerging in the early 2010s, but it went faster. So we met with this demand for out-of-home meals, and it was said before, hot sandwiches were also increasing. And the offers that were mentioned before was true for us too. A lot of bakers started proposing salads, which is not really our trade in the first place. We're about bread, and salad is not. But it's interesting to see this trend. Whether is it a good trend or not, I don't think there is a single answer to that question. So, customer demand in those years. I put a picture with something that has nothing to do with baking to really illustrate this trend. More and more variety in the propositions, in the menus, hot sandwiches, cold salads, and the notion of fast was still true, but it was more and more about nutrition and health rather than fast food. As far as I remember, in the years 2000s, when I was, in my training years, we didn't talk about nutrition. And then in the 2010s, we started talking about vegetarian offers, people who wanted to eat less and less meat. Let's move on to our second ingredient. I had to introduce you to Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese was a must. Our most famous is the Gruyère AOP. So label AOC AOP since 2001. I think AOP was actually 2007, if I'm right. So it's half of our ingredients for our famous cheese fondue. And let me remind you that Gruyère is not the cheese with holes in it. It's the Emmental French cheese that has holes in it. So I'm a bit off topic here, but I wanted to remind you of this difference. Another basic product of ours, called the ramequin, the cheese ramequin. You can't go to a baker's in Swiss without finding this. Like the Taiyo Grove, it's one of our classics. It's very basic. It's a short pastry. Traditionally, that was often made with lard, but now it's more made with butter. But historically, it was usually prepared with lard. and it's filled with grated gruyere, and it can be served hot or cold. And so it can be served in tea rooms, at tables, hot or cold, to take away. And it's part of our DNA as bakers in Switzerland. It's impossible to imagine a shelf in a Swiss bakers without this product. So what's happening today? To me, we have a much more complex picture today. It's more difficult to define. Customers' expectations require a lot more skills from bakers than before. The variety of what's being requested, in the fillings, the breads, I think there will be a lot to learn, and we have great tools that are going to be presented today to help us in that trend and evolution. Vegetarian or vegan products are not optional anymore. They're an obligation. We must have alternatives to special diets, or they will stop coming to us, or they will go and turn to franchises that have added this to their menu a long time ago. And the snacking market is also highly competitive. We are under a lot of pressure from delis, petrol stations, supermarkets, discounters, whatever you can come up. Anything that can sell a kind of baker's product or hot meal to take away is a competition to us. And back to Sébastien's presentation, I agree with his observation. The border, the wall between all these different kind of snacks, bakers, salad makers, and so on, is more and more blur. Before, a caterer, a baker, a pastry maker, all that was divided. Now it's all meshing up. And sometimes we can get lost in this, or we can be lost, and that's my personal view. I agree with what Sylvain said. I think it's important to really keep online our orientation, keep our DNA, our identity as craftsmen and craftspeople, because otherwise we would end up with making snacking that have nothing to do with our trade, and then we would lose our soul and ourselves. It's a conviction that I have. Today, the customer's demand it goes for fresh products, of course. And I do insist, I put it in bold in my presentation, locally sourced products is key. Every time we discuss with the consumer asking questions, they ask where we got the product from, if we know the farmer that did these vegetables or the dairy products. It's something that we can't get away from. We have to be able to answer these questions. And creativity is also something key in our products. Our consumers expect that from us as craftspeople. And we also have to provide snacks from dusk till dawn. It's if people come to us at 6 a.m., they want to get their snack for lunch, for instance. But if they come to us after work, they want to have their snacks available too. And they also want natural products without additives. Another key element to me, something that I've observed today in October 2021, expectations and habits from consumers accelerate so fast. It's exponential. They expect more and more, faster and faster, and we have less and less time to adapt. There are investment notions, training, and skill upgrading issues that are very difficult for us to manage. It's really time-consuming for business managers and for people thinking about this. This acceleration of the pace can be difficult to take on for our craftsmanship organization. So we have to adapt, but we must remain agile and responsive with all the challenges that it implies. Thank you. Sorry, I just have one thing to add. I have 1 minute. left. Another last product I wanted to produce, something not savory. We have the salé à la crème. It's a must for Swiss people in terms of secret recipes. Each village has its own, legend saying that it comes from them, that it's their recipe. But anyway, it's sweetened. Sometimes it's more acid and lemon-like. It depends on each village, and I thought it was interesting to present as a sweet snack instead of a savory one for a change. And to conclude, a few ideas on what I think is going to happen for the future. Everything is fast-paced. Everything is interconnected. We live in a world of communication. We can get lost, but we have to remain creative, agile. We have to be bold as well in what we are going to try and present to people, to stay on the map, as I said on my presentation, not to be forgotten, and something to be more optimistic. All these things that are expected from us today are a blessing in disguise, because it pushes us to be responsive and active and to create opportunities for craft people to show that we are creative and that we have the skills to adapt. And I think it's very important. And one last note, artisan bakers are here to stay. So, yes, we are still here. We're here to stay. I wanted to conclude on a positive note. I think we all have a lot of happy days ahead of us.
On va vite voyager. On va faire un...
Thank you. We will now go to India, and I will give you the remote. So this is India.
When the topic came, it was very difficult for me because it's a big country. It's a very big country. Baked goods are not the most commonplace, but it is growing. So it is very difficult, and it is very difficult to talk about it without introducing our ancient things or what we grew up on and what, because we've been colonized by British, Portuguese, French. So there's a lot of influences. At the same time, it's such a big country. It's 101.5 billion people. So every city, every village has got a snack. So okay. So baking and snacking industry in India, it's an 8 billion industry in size currently, and it's growing at a 9% compound annual growth rate. And it can be broadly classified into 3 segments: biscuits and cookies, breads, cakes and pastries. And 72% of the share is biscuits and cookies. India is the largest consumer in the world and the 3rd largest manufacturers of biscuits and cookies after China. Category is estimated to grow at 7 to 8% for the next 5 years. I'm just giving a brief and then we'll go into details. And breads is 15% of the share. But breads, that means mostly sandwich breads, which comes in a packet, which we use at home. And the Western version of bread was never a staple. We have our own breads, which we make with the regional grains which are grown, which we process and make it according to each house. We'll get into it. I think naans are the one thing which everybody is familiar with. There is only from one small place in India. And cakes and pastries is only 10% of the market share, but it is growing very fast, because it's celebratory, mostly celebratory cakes and all that. People spend a lot on it. So the bread and the biscuit industry, it started with the Britishers coming, and it was mainly to cater to the Britishers and to cater to the need of the British Army. There are 35 plus states and union territories. So each have got a different climate. Agricultural products, the lifestyle, the soil, the weather, everything is different. And we have our own traditional snacks and bakery products. So culinary diversity is one of the India's treasures, and there is no homogeneity. There is no connection between flavors from north to south and east to west. So we have all breads. We have baked, fried, griddled, roasted, steamed. You will find them all in India. So baking and snacking industry in India is on track to touch 13 billion euros in next 3 to 4 years. That's the growth. So if we can divide it broadly geographically, the most bread in northern India are unleavened or flat breads made of whole wheat or refined wheat flour, stuffed with variety of fillings of vegetable, cottage cheese, or meat. And they are, even in the street food, you will see a lot of them being made on the street. And the base of the breads are naans, paratha, kulcha, bhatura, kachori, etc. So wheat is predominantly grown in the north. So they have more wheat breads. Towards the west and central India, thick breads with native grains like jawar, bajra or millets, ragi. These are made into rotlis, bakris, which would be done. There's a thick breads which are griddled. It'll be dry, so it'll be good to take away and travel with. Sometimes it's had with a vegetable or a gravy, or some you can, because it's got spices and all mixed in, you can just have it as its own. So it travels well. So you have, or a train journey or longer journeys, you carry it. Towards the south and coastal India, that's where I'm from, the rice is the predominant grain. So it's actually 5 minutes too less to talk about India. So wheat is not so popular because there is this, I think, a notion, I talk too fast, is it okay? Is it okay? Okay. So let's say wheat was never, like us growing up, wheat was not popular. It was mostly rice and other lentils. So we have a batter that's doshas, idlis, uttappams, and we have different chutneys like coconut, tomato, with which we have it every day, or sambar, which is a mixed vegetable and a lentil. We still have it every day. So if we have it for breakfast, lunch, dinner, you'll find it on the road. So that's there. And these are healthy because you are fermenting it overnight with the lactic fermentation, and you're steaming it or you're griddling it with hardly any oil in it. Very good, digest easily. If you are talking about evolution through 2000s, post, like 70s and 80s saw a little bit of development, but we predominantly ate at home. Indians still, I think now, last 10 years, 12 years, I see people actually going out and spending money and eating because mothers stayed at home, fathers went to work, was the kind of culture. So there's always someone cooking at home, and we eat at home. We take our, lunch from home and all that. So eating out of home once in a while was just becoming acceptable in 70s and 80s. That's when the restaurants popped up. A young and independent working generation was slowly migrating to big towns and cities. Urbanization and westernization were quite evident through the 80s, 90s. Baking, manufacturing sector was moving from manual to now. So it is mostly automated. You see mostly big bakeries making biscuits and breads and all that. Biscuits were becoming hugely popular from when my husband helped me make the presentation. So when he meant sick man's food, it is that when you have a fever, you dunk biscuit and have it with milk, and it made you a little better. Was evolving in the most popular fast food product amongst all age groups. So India was one of the largest consumer and biggest manufacturer by now. The traditional regional breads were transforming the snack, and in the sense, these breads, which we discussed earlier, which was being used to develop snacks like a burger or a pizza. So we were using our traditional breads and putting fillings in it. So that is what veggies, spices, meats, and coming out as parathas. Parathas are like a naan, but whole wheat, but with a minced meat filling and griddled. Kulchas are again, it goes into a tandoor. And vada pav is very famous in Bombay. It's a simple bread just with water, yeast, salt. and you put a potato filling, potato, what do you say, deep fried potato, mashed potato filling inside. It's very, very popular, and various wraps and rolls. Yeah, snacking, we eat a lot of sweets. So it's like you have a samosa, I'm sure many, and then you have a jalebi, which is a sweet. So that's the combination we have. So these along with traditional Indian sweets and savory snacks like jalebis, samosas, chaats, pani puris, kachoris, etc. were our favorites through 2000s. Cakes and pastries remained an indulgence. So cakes and pastries are had during birthdays and anniversaries and weddings and engagements mostly. And yeah, as far as the breads, like our breads, what I see is concerned, because I've seen it only in the 2000s. I started working in 97. So 2000s, you see it mainly within five-star hotels. There are bakeries, there are restaurants, which was accessible only to certain people who were of that level, because common man could not. For me, being in the industry, I still feel a little odd going into a five-star hotel. You don't feel at home, but that has changed, thankfully. Okay, evolution through 2000s. Yeah, there was also in the 2000s accessibility to ingredients. There's a lot of foreign brands came with a lot of products which was easy to use. Like we didn't have non-dairy cream till, say, the end of 90s, 2000s. So that made it easier. And we were only using buttercream and ganache and all. So I know I'm like switching from here there, but then access to ingredients changed it. So we had dairy-free whipping cream and cheeses coming in and all that, which we were using in the baking. This is just a picture of some of our snacks. Down is the jalebi, up is the samosa. It is just a whole refined wheat flat bread, but it's stuffed with potatoes and fried. And we often have both of it together. So samosa and a jalebi. And chaat is just a mixture of lentils and fried batter, kachoris and kaju katli is, you can compare kaju katli to a marzipan, but made with cashew and flattened out, and it's edible silver on top. It goes, we eat it all the time. And gulab jamun. There is a lot of change happening now, because if you see, I think in every country you will have an Indian. Most of the IT engineers are Indians. So they go to places, they see, and they come back expecting the same things back home, which is good for me. I sell stuff. So Indians have started to travel all over the world for work and leisure. And it's the age of discovery, experience, and experiments when it comes to food. Also multinational fast food chains, many of them, and top 10 brands opened more than 5,000 stores in India in a span of 6 to 7 years. It's listed on the right, which iconic Indian brands like Modern Britannia, they are the big bakers. Modern Breads, Britannia, Parle became the world leaders in bread and biscuit manufacturing. So we're still the highest manufacturer. Okay. Consumers are discovering and moving towards consumption of grained breads which are healthier. So there is an awareness. People want healthier stuff. We are going to ancient grains. We use a lot of millets and which are grown in our country. Bread manufacturing is a volume-driven and low-margin industry with the disadvantage of very low shelf-life products. So, but bread, even though the sales are more, but money is less, is what. So,
It's okay.
yeah. These are just, again, pictures of some of the things we have. Rusk is just dried bread. When you say sweet the loaf, we dry it and we eat a lot of that. And I think I'll skip through it because I need to talk. 220, short on time.
Yes, yes.
Evolution in 2020s and beyond. Bread is undergoing a huge transformation, and from predominantly white sandwich breads, modern day bread in India is changing colors, shapes, ingredients, and nutritional value. Specialty breads lies beyond. Natural nutrition, healthy living, and organic products are what consumers are seeking now. There are brands and bakeries which do only specialty breads. Sourdough starters have become, you can say, a quarantine obsession. I have one in the kitchen growing, which I can't wait to use. Women entrepreneurs, there's a lot of women going out and doing short courses in breads and bakeries, starting, doing it, and specialty breads, big and small bakeries, doing from home, delivering it, and there is a demand for it. People want it. People pay good money for a sourdough loaf. Artisanal breads and related products a big part of game for them. From using a lot of additives, we started using lesser ingredients, which is again one of the principles of the ambassadors. So innovative companies with R&D, Puratos, Stefan knows, they come in, they make, they come to India and then they do customized flavors for the market, which again, they customize the products for us. So people have familiar products in the breads. Taste. I will skip that because that's a lot of stuff. This is just about our breads. We can discuss it later. Because, as I said, it's very difficult to not introduce our products. I want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing. Rise of the tapping into the artisanal market, yeasted sourdough bread, whole wheat bread, rye bread with caraway or dill seeds added to give earthy flavors. So these are the new trends which are coming in. People are doing it. Artisan bakers in India focus on selling traditional varieties of bread, which have rapidly increasing popularity. Organic Trade Association 2020 Organic Industry Survey showed that even though the food segment is dominated by produce, bread and grains take up 11% of the sales. There's an organic revolution happening down there. The Organic Trade Association recorded that the bread grains category sales at €5 billion, which was up 6% from here. So these are some of the breads. Okay, this is my daughter's doing. I said, get me the pictures of the best bread. She said, Amma, that's what she calls me, ours is the best pictures. So why don't you show them? So what we do is, me and my sister, we started this patisserie. It's mainly patisserie because that's where the money is. So that's where the money is. But we started breads, and because the patisserie is more a la carte, it's an online delivery system, and we have our own cloud kitchen. It's only deliveries. So it's a COVID baby, and luckily, it's doing very well. So these are I have 6 breads on my portfolio now, but like I said, I have a sourdough culture growing. I have good boys who are very passionate about it, and they feed it, grow it, play with it. So next, and I don't sell this on the website. We have, they have forums like Amazon, but smaller ones, if I can say, online platforms. So there's one called Farmazon, which is only for organic community. So they have actually access to 700, 800 apartments in Bangalore. So the customers place, so these are organic is what I sell every day. So they place the order previous night, and then we bake in the morning and deliver it to their warehouse, and so we are on 3-4 platforms and adding on. And our customers know we have breads, they search for it, they order online as well. So we make everything fresh and deliver. What I'm planning to do further is start the nursery. There is a market. There is a market because we don't use colors, we don't use artificial preservatives. It's minimum ingredients. We follow all that, and people know it, and they come back for more. And I'm not the only one. There are other players. I did not get time to put the pictures. There are 4 or 5, I know personally 4 or 5 very passionate people. In Kochi, there is a French Toast, if you can Google. There is Lawan in Bangalore. So all these people are doing the same thing. So but all of them have a storefront. So it's visible. I am only online. So once I go to the storefront, I want to portray it and display it. I think, yeah.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Alors, c'est...
Thank you very much. It's so frustrating to make you stop before the end of your presentation, but I think we can put your presentation online because it was a very rich presentation. Your country is big. There are so many things to learn about it for us. The figures were very impressive. And it's interesting for us to see which focus we could focus on in the future. So I wanted to remind you that it's 5 minutes per presentation only. Now we're going to Ukraine, and we will listen to Bogdan. That's up to you.
Yeah, just 5 minutes. Okay. Oh, sorry. The green.
Bonjour. Donc pendant 5 minutes, je vais vous présenter le développement.
Hello, for 5 minutes I will talk to you about the snacks development in Ukraine. Let's get started. After the separation between Ukraine and the USSR, the production of bread decreased on the market. So the best proposal we had at the time was pierogi. It's a sort of small stuffed patties. It was the snack of the poorest. So it's a dough that is cooked and fried. And we could fill it in with everything: fermented vegetables, fruit, jam, eggs, meat.
Сосиску. Это было просто и доступно. Это можно было либо выпечь, либо пожарить во фритюре. И также, например, они начинялись разными начинками. У нас было популярно это, например, рис с зеленым луком и с яйцом.
Then we had hot dogs and burgers. They were inspired by the West, but also very cheap. So it's a simple dough, baked and fried, and the fillings included everything that was cheap. So you can see on the picture that it can be filled with fruit, jam, eggs, and sorts of meat.
В основном был популярен ржаной хлеб и так называемые бутерброды. Это было просто хлеб с маслом, не пожаренным. Можно было делать дома, и как бы оно сервировалось с разными там намазками, колбасными изделиями, и было также доступно всем.
Donc l'Ukraine à l'époque était le grenier de...
So Ukraine at the time was the attic for grains and cereals of the USSR. So butterbread is bread and butter, not toasted. It was made at home and also served in canteens, especially to counter the effect of strong alcoholic drinks. So they were quite simple, and they are usually eaten with meat, fish, or cheese, and often eaten by people who like drinking.
Это первое, это было сало украинское, это свиной жир с небольшой прослоечкой мяса, которое было идеально подходило к черному хлебу, ну и еще чуть-чуть самогона нашего украинского.
Donc ingrédient spécial.
For the special ingredients for Ukraine, it's salo. It's a sort of Ukrainian lard that goes really well with black bread and homemade vodka. Then on the right, you can see bread with kulka. It's a sort of tiny fish, anchovies, actually.
нашего юга, это город Одесса, откуда вот мой переводчик. Вот. И вот такие маленькие бутерброды вот с тюлькой, либо форшмак, это перебитый мусс из селедки с добавлением картофеля и лука. Вот такие намазки популярны у нас на юге Украины.
Donc vous voyez que
So you can see that the small anchovies that are traditionally served in the Black Sea, around the Black Sea, near Odessa, where I'm from, in the south of the country. This is very traditional for the whole southern part of Ukraine.
Оставался продукт специальный, это сало и пироги, которые нарезались. Они могли быть вегетарианскими, либо с мясом, либо с ягодами. И как бы вот такие пироги, они составляли основной доход в крафтовых таких, в маленьких пекарнях.
donc à part Salo,
Except for Salo, we could find pierogies. There are some pies in bakeries, and they were served by portions.
Такое влияние Запада, это, например, открылся первый Макдональдс, и все стали делать как бы бургеры, открытые такие сэндвичи, и под влиянием также Востока была у нас шаурма, кебаб и тому подобное.
donc en 2010, c'est le
In 2010, the first McDonald's restaurant arrived in Ukraine, so there was an introduction of sandwiches, burgers, and pizza. If we have a look at the east, it's kebabs that also opened the Ukrainian market.
В 2010 году был популярен тостовый хлеб, из которого делались ваши французские так званые крок-месье. Вот, и также были популярны, потому что начиная с 2000-х по 2010 год это было, все смотрели в сторону Запада, в сторону Европы, вот, и в принципе копировали как бы и старались повторить вот ваши, подачу сэндвичей, подачу снеков, только с использованием украинских ингредиентов.
Et alors,
And the croque-monsieur's toasts also arrived in Ukraine, so it's a traditional French recipe, and in Ukraine we try to copy what is common on the French market, so that's why toast bread was introduced.
Был распространен бургер, в принципе он актуален и по сей день, и вот кебаб, который ассоциируется, стритфуд в основном, актуален и по сей день в Украине.
comme je l'avais déjà dit,
As I said, the burgers were introduced and the kebabs as well. They are very fashionable in Ukraine. But street food is also something that is new. Now we have more and more local products when it comes to the fillings.
На сегодняшний день, начиная с 2017 года, у нас тренд стал круассан-сэндвич, нарезные пироги, и в принципе это было для нас очень в диковинку, потому что в Украину стали заезжать иностранные шефы, показывать мастер-классы по выпечке, по хлебу с использованием закваски, длительного брожения теста, и на основе вот этого вот хлеба мы начали делать круассаны, на основе этих мастер-классов мы начали делать круассаны, начали делать хлеб и в принципе адаптировать под наших потребителей это все.
à partir de l'environ 2000.
From 2017, different chefs arrived in Ukraine and decided to introduce their products. They taught us how we could work with sourdough, with yeast, and how we could produce, for example, croissants. So there was a real boom from 2015, and the croissant sandwich was our flagship product. Now that the public has been used to quality products, we are working with quality ingredients, with sourdough, with yeast, with multigrain dough as well.
Мы делаем нарезные пироги, они, в принципе, которые заменили дешевые маленькие пирожки, но это более сделали, оздоровили, более добавили туда здоровые ингредиенты, и они сейчас популярны стали во всех пекарнях. И они приносят основной доход нашим пекарням.
Et maintenant, les tartes découpées.
And now the cut-out pies have replaced the piroshki we mentioned at the beginning that were really cheap. So there's a wide variety of fillings that are very good, very tasty, and more diversified. And these are fillings we can find in any Ukrainian bakery.
Заново также соленые даниши с местными локальными ингредиентами, например, сыр, грибы, мясо и тому подобное.
Maintenant, on peut dire que les croissants.
Now we can say that croissants and croissant sandwiches are very popular, but we are also using lots of local products, such as local ham, mushrooms, for example.
У нас сейчас тренд в Украине – это локальность и воспроизведение старых рецептов и технологий. И на сегодняшний день у нас популярный продукт – это шовдарь, это вяленое мясо, только используют такое подобие на как хамон, вот, только используется другая технология вяления, вот, и кровяная колбаса.
Donc, comme j'ai déjà dit,
As I said it already, the trend in Ukraine now is to use local products. So we're using, for example, lots of meats. Shovda, for example, it's a sort of a smoked pork meat. It tastes a little like the Spanish ham. We're also using pumpkin seeds, spinach, blood sausage, cheese.
На сезонность, на локальность, и упор также ведется на веганов и вегетарианцев.
donc aujourd'hui, pour
Today in Ukraine, we try to do everything to please people. So we're using lots of vegetarian, vegan products for our customers that are not eating meat anymore. And that was the end of my presentation.
Thanks a lot. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I hope we can have these presentations because I really want to see them a second time. We'll see with Amélie how we can do this. Now we're going to Brazil. And in 5 minutes, we'll try to have an idea of the local market there.
This Rose from Brazil. I don't look so, and my name is not so Brazilian, but I will show you a little bit from the snacks from Brazil because it's really some things that grow and it's very common in Brazil. I divide that in 3 groups. First group is non-yeast snacks, yeast snacks, and sandwich. Because non-yeast snacks, what is for us very common is the cheese bread, pão de queijo, né? And the second is coxinha. Every bakery have that. It's not yeast inside, but it's something that everybody knows. Especially in the parties, birthday and so on, this kind of snacks is a lot of consumed there. And empadas also, then we have this food street, the pastel, it's like a fried pastry and a puff pastry, filled with ham or chicken and cream cheese, and a little bit from influence, Arabian influence. If we see this picture, we can see that we have influence from the French part and a little bit from the Asian part, like the pastel, and also from the I forget the country here. I will remember that before. Yeast snacks is very common in the shops in Brazil. It's the pão de batata. It's a dough with potatoes and filled with also again with chicken and cream cheese and so on. And it's fija. it's from Emirates, né? Like this kind of snacks also is very common there. And what is every day usually in Brazil is the pão na chapa. It's like a French bread toasted with butter. That is for us every day. In the morning, we eat this kind of bread. And joelho is some things that we eat also. It's a sweet dog stuffed with ham and cheese. The sandwich, the main sandwich are doing with the bread roll, like you can see that in picture. It's sliced with mortadella, it's typical of São Paulo, and with eggs, with meat inside or pork meat. And we do also with pão de queijo sandwich. In the shops, they cook it sausage and put inside of the pão de queijo is very common also, and also the toast ham and the hot dogs. The flagship, especially in Brazil, is the pão de queijo because we have a special ingredient inside. It's the flour, manioc flour. It's very common there. It's a lot of consumption in Brazil. And in the past, we had a snacking between the meals. Like you can see here, and now we have more and more changing to have a sandwich as meal or to have snacks as meal. I put here some from French and England, but I think it's the same happens in Brazil. And more we have not so much time to eat during the work. That's why we are changing. And for that, the people are looking for more healthy snacks. No? We see that more and more is increasing the snacks. And what will be tomorrow? It's we see a lot of grains inside. We have already today. We are using grains in pão de queijo, who is very traditional product. And in the beginning, it was very different, and now more and more becomes more common. You can see in the all shops so pão de queijo with grain, and also. What will be tomorrow, and it's already begin, but it's already so a small part, is vegan pão de queijo, putting some other ingredients like carrots and so on. No? In the toasted bread, there is already using a lot of whole grains, seeds, and in the future so plant-based. That is it's for us clear that plant-based grains and also sourdough will be more and more usual in the future. A bakery in Brazil is very. We have generally in Brazil the bakeries sell more breads, but in São Paulo you will see there the big bakers. They sell all. We have lunch in the bakery. Practically in 60% of the bakeries in Brazil, they have lunch there. But we see that they are changing for sandwich, healthy, and so on. In between the COVID, we have to adjust only the packaging and also the way to deliver that. But we see more and more that the life becomes more normally, and people are going more to the bakery. They are increasing, and they are come back the old times. The people in Brazil is a hot country. Huh? People like to be in the streets and be together, and that's why I think we'll become together in this kind of ingredients, sourdough, seeds, and flavor, and grains will be the future for the snacks. But we have to see, and that is very clear in Brazil, that the people don't want to pay more for that. We have to organize that in the bakery, because adding this kind of ingredient becomes a little bit expensive, and that's the person want not to pay. But it will be a good challenge. Thank you. I will be together with you. When you have some question, please don't hesitate.
Merci.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting presentation. And what you said about the evolution of prices was very interesting. Now we're going to Italy. Hi, everyone. I am going to talk about the catering in Italian bakeries. The bakery market in Italy is divided into two extremes, the craft bakery and the bakery cafe. In the first one, there is a real oven, a stove with bread quality and good ingredients. And the second one is a trade concept that starts from the bread and from sourdough, and that produces products all day long. In the bakery bistro or cafes, there are cafes, desserts, and snacks. So these are not bars, but labs where everything is done on site. In the multi-format bakeries, the offer is based on bread, but is widening in order to meet the customer's needs. So breakfasts, snacks, quick meals, and pre-dinner food. There are many bakery bistros that have specialized and diversified their offer, especially for some specific moment of the day. So, for example, breakfast. Others are offering catering service, and others are open specifically for pre-dinner time. And this depends on the size of the shop and where it's located. There are differences between the north and the south, and they are getting smaller. The new openings are mostly bakery cafes with a catering offer. In the last few years, there was a spread on the national territory of bakeries with administration, even in the suburbs, where the competition with bars and pubs is not as strong. So the shops are more welcoming, and bakeries are starting to be again a nice place to be and to spend time at, especially for young people. Many bakery bistros have a specific character, and they only offer specific meals, for example, only starters or vegetarian meals, while others are targeting very demanding customers with a lot of products. Many of the meats that are offered are embedded in the tradition, and the cost, if we compare it to a traditional restaurant, is much cheaper. On the side, except for sandwiches, we have pizza, focaccia, and savory pies for quick consumption and usually to take away. But we also have pasta, spaghetti, for example, and other sorts of pasta that are loved for lunch. And we also have burgers and breaded and fried cutlets with chips or baked potatoes. This is a very common offer too. And it's always accompanied with good bread, obviously. But the consumption of vegan and vegetarian meals is increasing. For example, salads are booming, and they are obviously they're often accompanied with quite healthy and good quality ingredients. This is very trendy. Talking about fashion, the last fashion in the Italian cities is the pokeballs. So these are meals based on rice and served with fresh fish, fruit, and vegetable. At the end of the meal, pies and tiramisu are the most consumed desserts by Italians. And as a conclusion, obviously, we end up with a cappuccino. Thank you.
Merci pour la présentation.
Thank you for your presentation, for your quick presentation. We will be happy to have a second look at it. Now I'm calling. I wanted to thank all the speakers here for presenting the situation in their country, and thank you for trying to keep the timing. Now, for the round table, we are going to call our three speakers: Caroline Masson, Sébastien Ripari, and Dominique Planchot is already on stage.
Alors, on a...
So we have a lot of questions for you. All these presentations give us a lot of ideas. Obviously, this panel aims at being quite interactive. If you from the audience have questions, feel free to raise your hand so that we can give you a mic. I saw great things in these presentations that were really exhaustive. We have a lot of different talents and skills here, from nutrition to gastronomy. So one of the questions that comes first is this snacking world, and that I'm saying to give you the ball. In a few words, what is the impact, the vision you have of tomorrow's snacking? Let's start with you for the training aspect, because it raises questions. We need the skills. We need to work on snacking skills, and there's a lot to be done. So what does it feel? What do you think about it? Fabrice Prochasson. I am meilleur ouvrier de France in cuisine in '96, and I won the Bocuse d'Or, the Golden Bocuse. And with David Tissot, we worked on the technical days. I worked for 30 years in the Le Nôtre house on training, product development, international reception, shop, and sports events and political events around the world, so a wide range of skills. I also worked for Sodexo Prestige on their call for tenders, especially for the snacking business. That was a major activity of the group. And I also work on trends for pastry, snacking, baking. Today's snacking is nothing new. It's only that kind of the top of restaurants that is universal is street food. For centuries now, there have been street food restaurants. So it's nothing new to me. And I've been traveling a lot, so I know. The COVID crisis has accelerated trends in Europe in terms of time of consumption. Before the crisis in 2018-19, there were changes in France happening from 3.5 times of consuming to 4 or 5. And now we have 9 times of consuming all day long from 4 a.m. to midnight, even the empty fridge syndrome that we don't know how to use. But the empty fridge is a notion and a technical one. When looking at the global consumption, we have more snacking times than before. The French schedule with lunchtime and dinner time that are well defined is going to disappear. And if we look at the independent professionals, I think they understood the trend fastest and first. Not only in France, but also in Europe. They understood this need of faster and more frequent consumption of food. I think brunch has become a new notion. For lunch there were like sandwiches, but then quiches and so on. Now we have the after work at 4 and the after work at 7, which is more finger food like tapas and so on. And there's a lot to be done. And then there's dinner, which takes more time. And all these are key moments. And I think something that hasn't been mentioned this morning is who is the consumer and what do they expect? Because the crisis has just changed a lot of things. We have a variety of consumers' profiles, 7 to 9, I would say. And now the notion is about access. Whether you're rich or poor, everyone wants to eat out. Everyone wants to go and buy tapas or sandwiches and eat outside of the home. And markets are huge in terms of business. There's no limit to me. But at the same time, we need to be more and more healthier with corporate social responsibility involved as well. And partnerships between farmers, breeders, farmers to come up with solutions that are not very expensive but well-made, nutritional. It's interesting, this notion that people eat from 7 to 9 times smaller things throughout the day. It's a key element for us. In terms of nutrition, what does it make you feel? Well, this morning we have talked about consuming and snacking, and bread is at the heart of these consumption habits. We can see that lifestyles have evolved. People don't eat the same as they used to. And bakers are on the front line to improve the nutritionally acceptable snacking. And let's not forget pleasure. Nutrition includes pleasure. You shouldn't be punished because you want nutritional value in your food. And the craftsmanship and the know-how of you bakers is to combine the right elements, the right ingredients. And as recipes evolve, especially those that we're going to talk about for the next 3 days, we know that know-how is about combining grains and all ingredients, guaranteeing, and legumes to guarantee nutrition and pleasure. Throughout the various countries' presentation, we heard about cross-cutting notions. People want to eat well. They want food that meets their needs. Veganism is a real trend, and you can you can have a balanced diet being a vegan. And bakers have to provide with this balanced offer of food. So there is a marketing aspect. There are allegations, claims about nutrition that are important, but bakers are on the front line to defend their nutritional values and their food offer. And I think it's great to exchange with you on that today. Yes, there are questions actually raised for us as craftspeople, artisans. How do we communicate about nutrition without entering the Nutri-scores, as we call them now, the gradings or rankings of foods? Sandwiches are more and more worked on, more and more sophisticated with more ingredients, seasonings, all our know-how. But it's about cooking, even further than baking. So we will need to be able to reassure consumers on our providers, the supply chain. There are new diets, vegetarian, vegan. And what I actually enjoyed on the Italy's presentation is the aperitif, the snack food, tea time, the pre-dinner food, if you will. There are brunches now. So these moments are snacking moments, but family moments. Weekend brunch is a family time. It's about sharing. For the past 2 years, we've been frustrated, even before, because we had a lot of strikes in France, a lot of things that stopped us from gathering. Now we spend our times with our Teams, Zooms, iPhone, iPad, smartphone. So what's most important is to get together again. And if we each eat our menu, we don't share. Whereas tapas is about sharing. It's and you can have drink with it, whether it be a lemonade, soda, soft drink, or alcohol. But we decide how long we spend around the table. It can be fast or it can be 4 hours. We choose. We could see that the time for food at lunch especially has been reduced. But now let's talk about the trends. Sébastien, according to you, what are the main orientations of snacking and this baking and snacking trend? In your consulting field, how do you see it? Well, let me go back a while. Well, good morning, I'm Sébastien Ribari. I founded a consulting office on gastronomy. I was surprised by the quality of the presentations of international ambassadors, the bakers that were here. I thought they were really relevant in their analysis of the market. And a few years back, when we were working with bakeries, pictures were very old, communication was horrible. And here today, people took great pictures. Communication around baking is improving. People make efforts. You have come up with creative tools like Instagram, Facebook, and this is important for the future of bakery. And the favorite local shop of French people is the bakers. And we have the Caesar Ceremony Award or Presenters Award for there are elections for favorite this and that, but bakers is different. I have bakers, best baker in France, people who are specialized in real bread making, but consumers are not always aware. Who's who in the baking world? Who's doing their bread how? Who's better and who's not that good? In restaurants, we had the same issue. We didn't know who was actually cooking and who was just reheating frozen food. So the word restaurant shifted. And Ducasse was actually working on that, and they came up with the title Master Restaurant Owner. It's an audit that says that 70 or 80% of your products are fresh. Today, if you want to defend the French tradition as bread ambassador, if you want to remain a convenience store, a local store that people love, you have to be sure that consumers know who's a baker and who's not. In every food, restaurant industries, it's about core values, ancestral values. We're looking at how much time we spend preparing the food. We have new meals, we have new diets, vegan, flexitarian, vegetarian. These people have decided to take their food approach further. It was a niche. It's becoming stronger and stronger. The Y and Z generations are more and more aware about animal suffering and animal well-being. So no matter what food you're producing, you have to take that into account. It is the future. I have co-founded, which is Chef on the Planet, and we're defending sustainable food. And eating well today is also about voting. We need to take into account, and you have all these elements. All the demonstrations we've heard this morning have shown that you are fully aware of the mutation of the new generations. I have seen young people going to look at dumpsters of restaurants to see how much plastic they were using, and they can actually take their revenge on social networks. So that's not a great thing, but it does exist. You have to open your market. You already do. You have to travel. You already do. Because you're gathering ideas from elsewhere, from around the world. And as our Indian ambassador said, Indian people have become engineers. They travel around the world for work, and they come home with expectations. And that's true for many countries. Consumers want more and more information about what you're offering them. Look at the organic section in supermarkets. 25 years ago, supermarkets asked me about organic, and they told me, we just sell 4 ugly vegetables, and it will never grow further than that. Now you have organic products for anything, for packaging, for everything. It's not even a trend, it's an obligation now. Bakers, however, are about tradition. French tradition, discoveries, know-how. Yes, we have to open up our bakeries with more snacking. But there's tolerated snacking, and so bread has to be part of your snacking, because if you only offer salad, you're not a baker anymore. I was talking with a guy who's got a lot of bakeries in France, and he was telling me, now I have takeaway food, Italian food. The customers want it. Yes, okay, he gets money from it, but he's losing his identity, his legitimacy from it. Yes, snacking can be 40% of your turnover in the bakings, but bread remains your core product. And it will always stay that way. Increase your bread offer. Explain where your ingredients come from. Explain where you get your produce from. Explain the blockchain, the approach, the system you've implemented. And from then you will have loyal customers. Because in terms of gastronomy, the biggest trend is going back to ancestral values with bistro food. Bistro gastronomy is one of that. It's all about know-how. We used to have sauerkraut everywhere. Now it's impossible to find good sauerkraut in Paris. So the one who will come up with a sauerkraut in Paris will win the game. That's a strength. I didn't know the Ambassadeur du Pain before, and thanks to Sylvain, I actually looked into it. I looked at everything you're doing around the world, and as a consumer, I want to thank you and congratulate you, because people like you who are really supporting a responsible, healthy gastronomy, tasty gastronomy, I'm going to be a bit rude, but you're actually, fucking the ones that are not respecting producers and consumers. So I can answer questions, but at some point, we had this discussion. People used to go to the bakers. If you had a good salesperson, you would have bread and something else. Now, you go to the bakers to buy something else, and if the sale is good, you may buy bread as well. So there's been a shift. So let me be a bit provocative. When I'm listening to what you're saying, has bakery become cheap restaurant? And how far, as craftspeople, how far can we go in terms of price range to make sure we are not in the restaurant world, but in the snack world only? So who wants to answer? Well, I'm used to provocation and I'm used to diving, but this time I will take two safety nets. It's not about bakeries becoming restaurants. Consumers will always think about going to the bakers before going home. It's still a reflex. It's natural. Unless you have health crises that stop you from doing so, but it's the last place you go before going home after work. But buying one baguette is not enough because you finish late, you've got children. So we have a card to play here. We have an asset here. We know that we know our bakers. We know that they still have fresh bread at the end of the day. That's something good for us. But we have to be better as salesperson. We have to change our DNA. Our sales methods have to change. Consumers want to eat out, and they don't always have time to cook. So the solution is easy. Maybe supermarkets are easy, but people nowadays want something clean and clear. Both. So at the bakers, they feel safer. They can ask a question. They may have an answer. Because labels at the supermarket, it won't, make your life easier. Markets, place are good. Artisans, craftspeople, bakers. Delis actually have increased a lot during the crisis, plus 30% because they could guarantee the origin of the meat, French origin. They can deliver now. They also advise people to buy the nice cheese and the nice bread at the next door shop, craft shop. And that's the French model. It's changing. Before, people used to eat out in restaurants. And we shouldn't lose these habits. But bakers have a bigger part to play socially. It's part of the corporate social responsibility. Thank you for bringing this shedding this light on this issue. I have questions because we have been through a couple of very difficult years. What will remain of this? And what must we think about in terms of snacking and hosting, reception, hospitality? Well, it's both from the bakers and from the customers. It will not be the same way of answering the question. As Fabrice said, for the customers, they want to be reassured. Let's talk about hygiene, standards, and so on. But we are back to basics, really. We spend more time cooking as before the COVID. A lot of cooking broadcasts on TV, like Cyril on some channel. People are looking back to the French lifestyle, if you will, in terms of cooking. There was this revival thanks to the health crisis. Delivery has become something big too. Why burgers? Why is burger delivered everywhere? It's not the best, it's the easiest to deliver, like sushis and pizza. It's technical. It's not because people prefer that food, it's because it's easier to deliver. If you cook something not that great but deliver it cleverly, you will win over. When you have people setting up dark kitchens, they analyze what's easy to cook and deliver with a lot of profits. Because Uber Eats and so on, Uber Eats take up to 27 and 30% on the delivery cost. So I was fascinated by the Indian story on the delivery of bread. Because we've been wondering for a while now how bread could be delivered, but bread is not profitable. Unless you charge €5 for your baguette, and it won't happen. But if you could deliver some products at the end of the day to avoid having leftovers, And if you can package it in an overall offer like brunch, deliver me good brunch on Saturday lunch or Saturday morning. I'll be honest, I came back from work on a Saturday morning. I had coffee, no bread, nothing. Where I live, I only have industrial bakeries. So I took my motorbike to drive a few kilometers for a brunch. And I was dreaming to have someone to deliver me fresh bread with croissant. I would have been ready to pay for it. A crusty, warm bread, you know. It doesn't exist, but it should. So, yes, we're shaking things up here. We have a lot of delivery services available, but there's a cost. Who's going to be ready to pay for such delivery service? I understand what you're saying, but the second aspect is that in terms of restaurants, we are all together in that. I have bought that kind of food home sometimes, and I regretted it. Sometimes I bought good food, but in tin boxes, and I didn't reheat them properly, so the taste was spoiled. So there are limits in what you can do with delivery. Yes, spending 35 euros for a 2-star restaurant meal, but in a tin foil and reheating it, it's wasting your money and your time, really. Because takeaway, as Emmanuel Renault with his 3 stars, he really did good takeaway system. He took the right decision because he made really terroir, earthy food. And he delivered them himself with his food truck in villages up the mountains. That was a clever service. But we have to put the church at the center of the village again, as we say in French. Because delivery for the sake of delivery is not the way to go. Let's look at what the COVID crisis brought us. People need meaning. We need to save our craftsmanship and our jobs. And the consumers want it too. That's what they're asking for it. Let's not take them for fools. Consumers, even without money, are clever. I know a lot of young people who are brilliant, but they don't want to work a lot because they prefer to spend their time doing something else. They prefer earning less money, but they choose to earn less. They're not crazy or stupid people. They just make that choice.
But to go on what you were saying, that's right. Delivery and gastronomy or restaurants, these are 2 different jobs. What I tried was Ducasse, a great chef at home. So it was a takeaway during the pandemic. It was very good, but the packaging was not corresponding to the price. I didn't have any piece of advice from the wine manager, for example, from the waiter. It's something that I'm expecting when I'm eating food in a 3-star restaurant. Once again, we come back to the notion of service. For younger generations that are sometimes a bit tired with services, the long service in starred restaurants, it can be a little frightening for young people. Because there was a time when poorer people were put in a corner of the starred restaurants because they didn't look good in the restaurant room. So I think there's an evolution we have to take into account. We are part of the food tech, if we want it or not. I'm not a big fan of this concept, so food technology. But it's the way it's working. So we are trying to master it, to understand it, and to preserve our skills and our values. Delivery is a system that is booming. It's been accelerated by the COVID pandemic. With COVID, we gained 6 years in one in terms of delivery. So do we have to switch to this and do only delivery? I don't think it's a good idea. But we have to integrate it in our business models. Emmanuel Renault, for example, this great chef, won't keep this model. But there was a time when it was something fun and it was some advertisement for him. I think the conclusion of what was said is that the quality was good, it tasted good, and that's our legitimacy. We want our products to taste good. I have another question when it comes to people that are craftsmen, bakers. How can we accompany them? Once again, I want to go back to the upstream part, the training, health standards, nutrition, where, as bakers, in order to comply with our values, can we work on nutrition formulation? What is the future for us? You, as craftsman bakers, you know the ingredients. You are using them every day. You know how which type of flour will react, which seeds are good with which type of flour. So the idea is to find a way to combine pleasure and taste and nutrition. The craft baker must be able to produce products with proportions and portions, sizes that correspond to the consumer expectations. The consumers are expecting nutritional solutions. If we show them that we are respecting a certain balance, then we will be legitimate. And tomorrow, in our offer of bakery catering, even if we are aiming at taste, pleasure, flavor, we want to make sure and to strive to produce quality and healthy products that are good when it comes to the taste, but also nutritious. And we can make sure that the nutritious balance is there. I think you can see that I didn't make a lot of efforts when it comes to nutrition and the balance. But when we integrate nutrition, are we supposed to stop some packages or some combos? Or shall we rather educate younger generations to have a sweet snack sometimes, but let them know that it's not super healthy and we should have that only once in a while? So maybe we should focus on the education as well. The moment of the day when we can eat that kind of product, sweet products, for example. So can I use bread because the bread would be part of balancing my diet and making sure that it's not too full of calories? Yes, you're right. My idea is to make sure that to let people know that, yes, you can have food and enjoy your caramel pie without having to regret it for days. The thing is, in my day, I have to know that I cannot eat only pain au chocolat, croissants, and sweet pies. So yes, bread can be part of the solution. If I have decided to eat a sort of bread that is good for me, healthy for me, then I will have eaten in a healthy way, and I will be full for a long time as well. And maybe in the evening, if I have finger food, for example, with my friends and a glass of alcohol, then I won't have an explosion of my calorie count. And that would mean that the bread I've chosen has given me the nutritious element I need, for example, the trace elements I need. I have a question for you when it comes to diets. The first thing we hear when we want to start a diet is stop eating bread. It's what I've heard so many times. Yes, actually, I know it's a common misbelief. But actually, who knows better than bakers that bread can be good if the bread offer is balanced? It's good. We can eat bread and have a balance in our daily diet. So we have to consider the offer as a whole. So it's not because today I've eaten too much in terms of calories that I won't be able to compensate during the week. But bread is used as a healthy way of eating. Actually, bread is full of nutrients. So bread can be nutritious. Bread is, in terms of etymology, the core of our food system. I think we've talked about lots of topics. We have seen that our snacking range can still evolve a lot. We've seen in the different presentations that it can go from the pre-dinner food or pre-lunch food to desserts. When it comes to the limit between snacking and restaurant, maybe we have to think it differently. In my opinion, we've made a lot of progress when it comes to snacking, the way it's done. There are still plenty of things to be done. And that's now that I want to introduce Thomas and Sylvain. Today we've talked about nutrition, the different orientations, globalization of snacking. And I think you did a great job with the ambassadors. First of all, I wanted to thank all the speakers at the round table for what you said. It was really interesting. So now, Sylvain, can you introduce this book? We want to see it. We're eager for it. Do you want to start? No, I'll let you start. This book, like all the books we've published, it's not just a book. We've had difficult times during the writing, as you know, because of the disappearance of Roland. We were satisfied when we started writing this book because you all sent your recipes, and we worked a lot to publish those recipes with bread fillings, and we will let you know how we get organized. It was actually a great adventure. As you said, we've had to take over from Roland. That was not easy, but that was a great motivation too. Actually, first when I was told that I was to take over for snacking, I was not really motivated. And then we launched a call for recipes, and I wanted to thank all the people who sent recipes. There were many recipes sent to us. We had to select some. I know some of you have sent recipes that are not included in the book, but that were very good. So we worked on the selection of recipes. And when we saw the number of recipes we'd received, it was a huge selection. It was a wide range of recipes. Some people were thinking about aesthetics. Other people were thinking about profitability of the recipe. Others about local products, healthy products, more complex products. Other products that can be more interesting in terms of nutrition. We worked on a recipe taking into account the nutritional aspect of bread. When the bread was not that nutritious, we had to find a method to produce it by adapting the fillings to make sure that there was a right balance. We strived to have a nutritional balance. It was one of Roland's decisions and choices, and we went on with this logic. And I think that's also the success of this book. There were also recipes of breads that were very interesting in terms of nutrition. So we worked on the flavors, the pleasure effect. We worked on lots of fillings. And we also worked with other people. So we started working with a cook, a chef, who's Sébastien Morier, who's part of the ambassadors. We don't work with many chefs, so he was the one who was very strong because he could work with us. That's not such an easy thing, and he's really excellent. It was a lot of work for him. So the book is about 50 professionals that worked on it. Ourselves, we're just the finalizers, if you will. It's just a collaboration work. I want to thank everyone for your efforts. We want to go on. We will now start the book on brioche. It's the next project. And in terms of transmission and transfer of Roland's heritage, we worked a lot from home. We included lots of younger bakers. And if young bakers want to take part in the next book, that's what we're looking for. We need to have a variety of experts. We are working together, and we are getting richer with experience if we can exchange the different practices. So there's also this will to learn together. Once again, this book is showing that we are trying to widen our job. We tried some vacuum packagings, but it was not working for all of us because some of the bakers that are ambassadors cannot afford to buy new systems of packaging that are adapted to the baker ovens, for example. So the watchword of the book is that it's the fruit of collaboration. It's a collective work. And it made us want to go on working on future books. So I really invite you to participate to this project. Some of you took part in one session only, others took part in many sessions, and the fact that we mixed younger and older bakers was just great. Thank you.
Pour compléter la présentation avec Roland.
To go a bit further on the presentation with Roland, we wanted to focus on the bread and then in a second time on the filling. We wanted to make sure that the focus was on the bread because it's a baker's book. So I think bread is in sharing is in the DNA of our association. As you said, Thomas, we have to find the right compromises. We saw that with the Nutri-Scores, it was not always easy to integrate some of the ingredients that are very fat. I wanted once again to thank all the people that contributed to this book because it's a great success of the teams. And we've found a way to work on the recipes. In the past we were working in seminars, 2 to 3 days seminars several times to make sure that the recipes were good. This time we did it with a Visio system, so it was not that easy, but it worked in the end. And we have to mention the writing part that took a lot of time. Amélie did a lot of work in terms of writing, content, and layout as well. As you can see, this book is much thicker than the previous ones because there are many recipes inside. And I wanted to mention that everyone worked for free on this book. It is to develop the know-how of all the bakers. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for all the speakers for your participation. This roundtable was amazing and very interesting, very rich. And we have still so many things to learn. The world is moving and we have to follow the different trends and also accompany our ambassadors, our colleagues, to follow them. Thank you.